Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, let's talk some boxing. But before I do, I always like to give all the credit and thanks to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Without Him, I would be nothing. I would be nothing. I just want to share with you guys a scripture that I probably shared yesterday. It's John 10:10, and basically says that a thief comes in to steal, kill, and destroy. But Christ came that you could have life, and not just life, but have it abundantly. And if you want to know what it is to have abundance of life, every one of us have a certain measure of life, and when that measure is gone, we die, right? But abundant life is not just eternal life, it's life that you got extra to share with other people. You know what I mean? So if you're interested in really living, man, and you're interested in the Lord Jesus Christ, I suggest strongly that you talk with Him. And yes, you can have a conversation with Him right now, and you don't even have to speak. You can just think. And that's how people pray and stuff, you know what I mean? So you can talk to Jesus right inside your head. You can talk to Him, and you can ask Him to become a part of your life and to find out more about this abundant life that He has to offer. And you just ask Him, Jesus, heard about you, don't know who you are. I would like to know more about the abundant life that you could give me. So I hope you guys do check that out. If you guys know who Jesus is, that's awesome. Always good to get to know Him more and more every day. Every day is a learning experience where you learn more and more about Jesus in your life, not some theoretical thing from outside. Let's get to the boxing. So in my videos before, if you guys been following me in my videos, you saw that Keith Thurman beat Danny Garcia. He's now the unified WBA, super champion, and WBC champion at welterweight, which is an awesome achievement. But it didn't just come by luck and chance, and how we will easily look at this is by watching at the CompuBox punch stats. And CompuBox punch stats, cumulative CompuBox punch stats is one thing, but round by round punch stats really tell the story of this fight. So you look at the total punches landed versus the total punches thrown in each round, and you see that Keith Thurman out-threw Danny Garcia in round 1, and he also outlanded Danny Garcia by 2 punches in round 1. Okay? While Garcia was the more accurate puncher, Thurman was the guy who out-threw and outlanded Garcia. Alright? In the second round, the same thing. He out-threw and he outlanded Garcia. Third round was the same story. He out-threw and he outlanded Garcia. Fourth round, same story. Wider margin. Out-threw, outlanded Garcia. It shows Garcia's now difficulty in connecting to Keith Thurman. Okay? And that's because Keith Thurman started to mix it up by round 3. Keith Thurman was coming forward and sometimes going backwards. Coming forward and then sometimes going backward. If you watch the interview with Willie Monroe in ES News, Willie Monroe explains it very well. That's why I call guys like Keith Thurman, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, I call them ambush fighters. Timothy Bradley, when he was fighting Juan Manuel Marquez, did that same thing. It was an in and out style. He wouldn't stay in the pocket too long. Keith Thurman, same thing, in and out style. Didn't stay in the pocket too long. Right? Let's keep it going. Round 5, same story. Out-threw, outlanded Garcia. Round 6, same story. Out-threw, outlanded. Well, actually, no. Round 6, Garcia actually was more active than Keith Thurman. He threw more punches, but Keith Thurman was the guy that still landed more punches than Garcia. It was around about the same thing, but again, Keith Thurman was the guy outlanding Garcia. Now, these are very important points because from round 1 through round 6, based on punches landed and thrown, Keith Thurman is showing that he won the fight. But that doesn't mean much because it's always the kind of punches that were thrown and landed. The jab has a lot to do with the fight. Okay? Jabs thrown have a lot to do with who's controlling the fight. And jabs landed also says something about the fight. Okay? remember, we have different kinds of punches, and it's where on the body these punches actually land that make a difference. So you have to think about all those things. But round 7, again, Keith Thurman outthrows, outlands Danny Garcia. Round 8, Keith Thurman outthrows, outlands Danny Garcia. Round 9, same story. Okay? Round 10. This is the round where Garcia actually got it, because he outthrew and he outlanded Keith Thurman. So we can say with a surety, based on punch stats, that probably Garcia won round 10. Okay? Round 11, we see that Keith Thurman outthrew, but Garcia outlanded Keith Thurman. I think these are the 2 rounds everybody agrees Garcia won. Round 12, on the other hand, it's up for grabs. I thought Keith Thurman stole that round. I thought he won round 12, close out the show. But it's debatable. You can say that Garcia won that. So based on the punch stats, Keith Thurman outthrew and outlanded Garcia for 9 out of the 12 rounds. Actually, yes, 9 out of the 12 rounds. Keith Thurman outthrew and outlanded Garcia. Okay? His connect percentage was lower than Garcia's because he threw more. Okay? He was the more active fighter. Now, why was Keith Thurman able to do this? It's because Keith Thurman was more mobile than Garcia. And Keith Thurman played to his advantage over Garcia and to Garcia's disadvantage to him, which is that Garcia is flat-footed. So Keith Thurman would change up the angles all the time, go in and out. Instead of pushing Garcia back and having more trade-offs and therefore making the fight more difficult for himself, Keith Thurman decided to make it easier for himself and box Garcia. But first he established that he could hurt Garcia. He needed Garcia to know that by coming straight out in round 1 and testing him and hurting, well, making him clinch up. I wouldn't say he hurt him really bad, but buzzed him a little bit and made him clinch up. Okay? Round 2, now Garcia is kind of thinking about what Keith Thurman might be doing and what kind of heat he might throw at him. So Garcia is not just going all in trying to walk Thurman down. And so for a majority of the round, Thurman's chasing Garcia around. Sorry, not majority, but a good part of the round, Thurman's chasing down Garcia. Okay? Round 3, Thurman's bringing the heat, and then he's backing off. By round 4, Thurman's on the back foot. Now, a lot of people think that Thurman, he was backing off of Garcia because Garcia hit him with some body punch or something. No, he was instructed in his corner by his coach to box Garcia. Okay, to box him. He was playing to his advantage over Garcia, and that's what he basically did for the rest of the fight. However, he wasn't fighting exclusively on his back foot. See, the difference between Lamont Peterson and Keith Thurman was that Lamont Peterson was exclusively fighting off the back foot, and he wasn't really landing anything. He was maintaining distance, but he wasn't scoring. And as Willie Monroe so correctly said, Keith Thurman, he ensured that he won the beginning of the trade-off and the ending of the trade-off. So that stayed in the judge's mind, and then he wasn't getting hit. He could clear out the way, and so he had the clean, effective punches, and he was the guy that won the trade-off from the beginning to the end. And you saw that a lot. So it looked like Keith Thurman was dominating Garcia, and that's something Floyd Mayweather does as well. Keith Thurman really is a student of the science of the sport. Now, when we look at jabs, again, Keith Thurman is out-throwing Garcia for the majority of the fight in terms of jabs thrown. And, of course, a jab thrown has a lot to do with so many different things, from establishing distance to gauging range to keeping your opponent at bay a certain way to changing up the angle on your opponent to being able to land that straight right he wants to land. So there's so many reasons for having the jab. So the jab doesn't have to land all the time, but what's important is who is dictating the fight by throwing the most jabs. See, the guy who usually is throwing the most jabs, he's actually dictating the fight. And throughout the entire fight, barring rounds 10, Keith Thurman basically was controlling the fight because he was throwing the most jabs. It wasn't about landing the jab, because the jab has multiple different purposes. It was about throwing the jab in this case. Now, you saw that Garcia, he landed more jabs in round 1 than Thurman. But Thurman was going for power, of course. Round 2, same thing. Round 3, however, Thurman was controlling the fight. He threw more jabs. Round 4, Thurman again. Round 5, Thurman again. Round 6, Thurman again. Round 7, Thurman again. Round 8, Thurman again. In fact, Garcia didn't land a single jab. Round 9, Thurman again. Round 10, Thurman again. Round 11, Garcia. Round 12, Garcia. All right? The point is, Thurman controlled this fight by not only out-throwing Garcia with the jabs, but also outlanding him with the jabs. And that's because the jab was a key weapon that Thurman used to gauge distance on Garcia, keep him at bay, and also keep him out of range. So if Garcia's out of range, Garcia can't do much, right? So that's what Thurman did. Now when you look at the power punches, again, Thurman overwhelmingly dominates Garcia, not only in throwing them, but in landing them. Round 1 was a perfect example. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, round 6, no. Garcia threw more power shots there. 7, 8, 9. Round 10, Garcia again. He got the edge on that one. 11, Garcia again. And round 12, Garcia, even though Thurman was more accurate in landing power shots. In fact, I would say Garcia threw more, but he didn't land. He landed the same amount, which shows again that Thurman got his effectiveness. I thought Thurman won round 12, by the way. My point anyway is this. While Thurman percentage-wise was lower than Garcia, even though in terms of the power punches negligibly, in terms of the total punches significantly, Thurman controlled this fight because of 2 reasons. 1, his jab, and 2, because at the end of the day, when you look at the punches thrown and landed, Thurman threw 17 more, landed 17 more punches and threw 136 more punches. Okay, so that tells you that not only was Thurman the busier fighter, but he was also the more effective fighter in terms of landing punches. I'm talking about landing. Now, in terms of his connect percentage, he wasn't the more accurate fighter. Okay, you see Garcia having a slight edge. He had like a 4.2% edge over Thurman in that respect. But in terms of everything else, Thurman outdid Garcia in every single department. Okay, because he was busier, I guess he would be a little less effective than Garcia. And again, it wasn't tremendously different. There wasn't a tremendous difference in terms of accuracy. Okay, so hands down, Keith Thurman won this fight. I mean, the judges had it. One judge had it 8-4, which is what I had it, and the other 2 judges had it 7-5 one way and then the other way. I think the judge who had it the other way, maybe it's the position in which he was seated. He seemed to think that Garcia had the advantage over Thurman. But I just couldn't see how, even if you're walking down a guy, you got to be effective with your walk down. You have to be effective, have effective aggression. Now, I didn't think Garcia could cut off Keith Thurman because Keith Thurman is one of those fighters you can't cut off the ring on them. Like Floyd Mayweather is a fighter that you can't cut off the ring with. Okay. Pacquiao, it's a little bit difficult to cut off the ring on him. See, there are certain fighters you can't just cut off the ring with. Okay? And then Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, and Canelo Alvarez, they're not really fighters who seek to cut off the ring. They want you to come to them. They kind of feed off of counterpunching. Juan Manuel Marquez is another example. They're not really going to go chasing you down. So that kind of fighter, if you got the right foot movement and so on, they will cut off the ring, don't get me wrong, but they prefer to lay back and let you come to them, you know. So that's what you saw in this fight. Danny Garcia did get Keith Thurman in the corners, but the thing about it is Keith Thurman knew what to do once he got into the corner to get out of the corner. Okay, so it was going to be a tough task for Danny Garcia to beat Keith Thurman or get him against the ropes and just wail on him. And not even Sean Porter could get that done with Keith Thurman. He had 1 or 2 times when he was able to do it, but for the most part, Keith Thurman was able to turn Sean Porter even. So, and counterpunch him as well. So at the end of the day, fighters like Thurman and Mayweather, and Andre Ward, fighters like to some degree Manny Pacquiao, you're not going to be able to just hit him just like that. You know, Pacquiao, you can hit him when he's attacking you, right? Keith Thurman's a little harder to hit, but he's a little slower. So, like I was saying, you have to understand what kind of fighter you're dealing with, right? When we talk about Floyd Mayweather, he's not just purely a defensive fighter. He's not just purely a counterpuncher. When you talk about Keith Thurman, same thing. You're not talking about a pure counterpuncher. You're not just talking about a defensive fighter. Yes, defense plays a big role in Keith Thurman's fighting, and Mayweather's fighting, and Andre Ward's fighting. But what separates Andre Ward, Keith Thurman, Floyd Mayweather from the rest of the fighters that they say use that kind of style, that so-called stick and move style or fighting off the back foot, is that these guys, they don't only fight off the back foot. They come forward at you sometimes. And another thing is they make you miss, but they make you pay. Lamont Peterson was talking about, oh, Floyd Mayweather did this and did that. No, Lamont. You was trying to stick and move, but you wasn't landing nothing when you were sticking and moving. Erislandy Lara, he not a guy who will make you miss and make you pay. What Erislandy Lara do is he try to counterpunch you a lot of times, but he also he make you miss, and he'll show you that he missed, but he don't step to you. Erislandy Lara don't step to you, right? He don't back you up. Erislandy didn't back up Canelo. You know what I'm saying? He keep on being on the back foot. You can't exclusively be on the back foot. You got to step to the man, and you gotta initiate something at certain points in time. It's not just about counterpunching and laying back and making it easy. Floyd Mayweather don't do it. Keith Thurman in this fight didn't do it. And Andre Ward don't do it. Right? When he was fighting Sergey Kovalev, he was taking it to Kovalev. He was on the inside taking it to Kovalev. All right? And that's because you have to change up your fight plan. When you look at Erislandy Lara versus, say, Zabik, that's what he had to do. You need to come forward on your opponent. Otherwise, if you're just going to fight off the back foot and run, because that's what Erislandy Lara literally did. He literally took a jog a couple times in the ring. And you never seen Floyd Mayweather take a jog. You never seen Floyd Mayweather go into a trot. He don't do that. Okay? He doesn't do it. Have you seen Keith Thurman run away from somebody? No. He doesn't do that either. Alright? So, at the end of the day, using Garcia's words, you've seen Manny Pacquiao take a trot. In fact, he ran away from Floyd Mayweather. You've seen Marcus Maidana take a trot. You've seen him run away. You've seen Sergey Kovalev take a trot from Andre Ward, run away. So when I hear casual fans talk about, oh, Thurman was running, I immediately know you're just a sore loser because you don't know boxing. All right? Thurman, not 1 second in that fight, ever ran away from Danny Garcia. He cut an angle. Sometimes he dipped low and cut an angle on you, right? And pivot to the side of Garcia. He did it. He kept on turning Garcia, right? He would use shuffles. But to tell me he was running, are you kidding me? How you gonna run? How you gonna run from somebody and still hit them at the same time? You just hit and run? Come on, man. It's called a drive-by, yeah, if you hit and run. But I'm just saying, ambush fighter, man. Keith Thurman don't have to stand right directly in front of you and take punishment. What, you think this is a rock'em sock'em robot kind of thing? Garcia wasn't even standing in front of Thurman to take punishment. He was ducking and slipping and snapping back and pivoting and rolling punches to get out the way. In fact, there was a certain point in time when Thurman was coming after him, like Floyd did against Pacquiao, and Garcia took it. He just ran out of there. He galloped out of there. You know what I'm saying? Like all the people, all these strong men that you guys talk about that's supposed to beat these other fighters, why is it that they're the ones literally running? Need I show a clip of it? Because I can show a clip where Thurman was coming at Garcia, and Garcia literally backpedaled out of there. Like ran. And these guys are come forward fighters. So I'm just saying, You guys got your information all back fronted, man. You know, you gotta know boxing, man. I listen to some people talk. Keith Thurman, he just throws some wild, like a B-level fighter. And I'm listening to this dude. He's so sour that Thurman beat Garcia. He gonna talk about Thurman as if he's a B-level fighter. Thurman breaks down what he did to Garcia, showing that he's not only an A-level fighter, but he's a cerebral fighter. He's a smart fighter. And you guys got that. Or you guys come out and say, oh, he got hit with a body shot, and that's why he kept on running from Garcia. No, he mixed it up. When he ready, he go on the back foot. He did whatever he wanted to do. All right, you guys know he's one time, so you expect him to knock out everybody. He's still one time, and he's still dangerous, as Garcia said. But there are many different dimensions to the guy, and he was just listening to his corner, his trainer. I forgot the trainer's name right now. I don't know why I can't remember his name. But he was listening to his trainer, and his trainer told him to box Garcia. Okay? Box him. Told him to box him. So why not box him? You know, he took his instruction and he went and he boxed him. Okay? He's given all credit to Ben Getty, but he's also got a trainer, and the trainer helps him. And he's a very smart fighter. So why make the fight harder than it needs to be? And if you look at all these punch stats here, they all show that Keith Thurman resoundingly won this fight. I don't care if you think he was landing. And you know what's interesting? People don't talk about this part. Thurman wasn't exclusively headhunting. He was also landing body shots. They actually traded a couple body shots well. And it was a body shot that hit Garcia, and Garcia was straining a little bit low. But it was a body shot that hit Garcia that made Garcia back the hell up off of Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman did what Sean Porter did to Adrian Broner. He would make the fighter who does not like to come forward, and he likes to counterpunch, he made him come searching for him, hunting for him, and then he would just spring his attack when he wanted to on Garcia. So he always had the advantage in the trade-offs, because Garcia was a little deficient in that his feet, he had to slide his feet to get into position, whereas Keith Thurman already had pivoted on him, and then he could attack him at the angle he wanted to get him at. But again, you guys have to be able to see this stuff. It's boxing, it's mathematics, it's seeing the angles of approach and attack. You got to get in there and get out of there without getting much damage done to you. And Keith Thurman was easy. It was easy work for him because he had to get in at an angle, and then he had to get out at another angle. And if there's a rematch with Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman will beat Danny Garcia more convincingly, because Keith Thurman's a boxer. In Danny's style, while Danny had some nice elusiveness and stuff, Keith Thurman's just going to add to what he already did to Danny Garcia, because it was just way too easy for Keith Thurman. He shut it down. I think Keith Thurman shut it down by around 8, 9. He shut it down. You know, that's why coasting into round 10 and 11, Garcia took those rounds. Keith was like, you can have that. You can have 10 and 11, and he came and stepping back up in round 12. All right? And it's not like Keith was fatigued or anything. You could see he was still fresh. He was still throwing the punches and everything. It was just that he shut it down. He said, all right, let me frustrate this kid. And then he stepped it back up. It wasn't... Another thing, people talk about Oscar De La Hoya and Tito Trinidad. Tito Trinidad was landing on Oscar. Up to the 12th round, he was landing on Oscar. Oscar did outbox him, but you could see Tito hit Oscar with something. And Oscar was hesitant to come in on Tito. This ain't the same case with Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia. Again, you got to watch the fights. The thing with me, I always tell people, you can listen to all these other people talk about a fight. Like all those old timers used to talk about all the all-time greats, right? Because we don't have footage of them. And they talking about all these sensational things. That's a person's account. I want to see the fight, and then I'll say, sometimes when I hear these old timers talking, I get footage of the actual fights, and I'm not so impressed, because what people said embellished the story. But when I see the story myself, I realize it's more hyped up than it really is. Anyway, on that note, you guys have a great one.